Only 5% of those who watch my videos are subscribed. Please don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy my content. This helps me a lot. Enjoy the video. In the quiet suburban streets of Cedar Falls, Iowa, where white picket fences lined perfectly manicured lawns and children's laughter echoed from backyard swing sets, the Hayes family seemed to embody the American dream. Their colonial-style home, with its red brick facade and wraparound porch adorned with hanging baskets of petunias, stood as a testament to their success and stability. To neighbors and friends, they appeared as the perfect blended family, a testament to love conquering all obstacles. But beneath the veneer of normality lay a dark, unsettling truth that would eventually unravel them. Robert Hayes, 45, was a successful insurance executive whose commanding presence and silver-streaked hair had earned him respect in both his professional and personal life. After losing his first wife Linda to cancer 3 years prior, he had thrown himself into single parenthood, determined to provide the best life possible for his son. His dedication to his work often required extensive travel, visiting clients across the Midwest, but he saw it as a necessary sacrifice to secure his family's future. Robert's son, Tyler Hayes, 18, was a senior at Cedar Falls High School, a quiet and introspective young man who had inherited his father's strong jawline and his late mother's gentle blue eyes. The loss of his mother had left Tyler withdrawn and searching for connection. He was an excellent student, captain of the debate team, with plans to attend the state university in the fall. To his teachers and classmates, Tyler was the model student, polite, responsible, and mature beyond his years. 2 years ago, Robert had remarried, bringing into their lives someone who would change everything. Victoria Hayes, 28, was a stunning brunette with emerald eyes and a warm smile that could light up any room. She worked as a beauty model, doing photo shoots for local boutiques and regional beauty campaigns, her striking features and natural elegance making her a sought-after face in the Midwest modeling scene. When Robert first introduced Victoria to Tyler, she was everything a grieving teenager could want in a mother figure: understanding, patient, and genuinely interested in his thoughts and dreams. Victoria had entered their lives during Tyler's sophomore year, when the wounds from losing his mother were still raw and bleeding. She never tried to replace Linda, instead positioning herself as a friend and confidant. Tyler, starved for maternal affection and emotional support, found himself drawn to Victoria's warmth and understanding. She would help him with his homework, listen to his teenage struggles, and offer the kind of emotional support his work-focused father often couldn't provide.
Hi everyone, I'm Bram, and I really need your help. Could you please hit that subscribe button for me? And don't forget to watch until the very end.
The family dynamics seemed healthy and balanced. Robert was grateful to have found love again and to see his son bonding with Victoria. Tyler appreciated having someone who truly listened to him, who seemed to understand his pain and his hopes for the future. Victoria felt fulfilled in her role as stepmother, genuinely caring for Tyler while building a life with Robert. They were the picture of a successful blended family, attending school events together, hosting neighborhood barbecues, and participating in community activities. But what no one knew was that Victoria and Tyler shared a bond that went far beyond the bounds of familial love. It had all started innocently enough when Tyler was 16, a time when he was struggling with the typical challenges of adolescence while still grieving his mother's death. Robert's increasing travel schedule for work meant that Victoria and Tyler spent long hours alone together in the house, time that began to blur the lines of their relationship. It began with late-night conversations in the kitchen after Robert had left for another business trip. Tyler would come downstairs, unable to sleep, and find Victoria reviewing modeling portfolios or touching up photos from her latest shoots. She would make them both hot chocolate, and they would talk for hours about everything: his fears about the future, his memories of his mother, his struggles with feeling abandoned by his frequently absent father. Victoria was a skilled listener, offering comfort and understanding that Tyler desperately craved. As the months passed, their conversations became more intimate, more personal. Victoria shared her own struggles, her fears about being a stepmother, her loneliness when Robert was away, her own childhood trauma that had left her seeking validation and connection. Tyler began to see Victoria not just as his stepmother, but as a complex, vulnerable woman who seemed to need him as much as he needed her. The physical boundaries began to shift gradually, almost imperceptibly. What started as comforting hugs when Tyler was upset evolved into longer embraces. Victoria would place her hand on Tyler's shoulder during their conversations, her touch lingering just a moment too long. Tyler, confused by the emotions he was experiencing but hungry for connection, didn't pull away. Instead, he found himself looking forward to these moments of physical contact with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified him. But as they entered Tyler's senior year, that closeness began to shift into something more complicated. It was during a warm September evening, after Robert had left for a week-long business trip to Chicago, that the first line was crossed. Victoria and Tyler had been sitting on the back porch, the air heavy with the scent of late-blooming roses and the distant sound of crickets. The conversation had turned to relationships, with Victoria sharing her concerns about feeling disconnected from Robert due to his constant travel. Tyler, in a moment of vulnerability, admitted that he felt more understood by Victoria than by anyone else in his life, including his father. Victoria, perhaps emboldened by the wine she had been drinking and the loneliness that had been gnawing at her, leaned in and kissed him. It was a brief, tentative kiss, one that they both immediately regretted, or at least told themselves they did. They pulled away, shocked at what had just happened, but neither could deny the electric current that had passed between them. They tried to laugh it off, to pretend it was nothing, just a moment of confusion brought on by wine and emotional vulnerability. But the line had been crossed, and there was no going back. What followed was a slow, torturous descent into forbidden territory. They would steal moments alone, away from the watchful eyes of neighbors and the community. At first, it was just physical, a way to explore the unspoken connection they had always felt. But as time passed, their affair became more intense, more consuming. They were drawn to each other like moths to a flame, knowing full well that they were playing with fire. Victoria was the first to feel the weight of their actions. She knew it was wrong, that their relationship was something that should never have been, but she couldn't stop herself. The thrill of the forbidden, the secrecy, and the intensity of their bond were intoxicating. Dylan, too, was caught in the web they had spun. He loved Victoria in a way that defied logic and reason, and the idea of losing her was unbearable. They developed a routine, meeting in secret whenever they could. Late at night when the neighborhood was asleep, in the hidden corners of their home when Robert was away on business, and even in Victoria's car parked in secluded spots around town. Every encounter was a mix of passion and guilt, the euphoria of being together quickly overshadowed by the crushing reality of what they were doing. The affair began to take a toll on Victoria. The once confident and nurturing stepmother started to withdraw from her friends and colleagues in the modeling industry. She became irritable, her mood swinging from elation to despair. At photo shoots, she would sometimes find herself lost in thought, replaying moments with Tyler in her mind, only to be jolted back to reality by the photographer calling her name. Her drinking increased, a way to numb the conflicting emotions that tore at her soul. Tyler, on the other hand, buried himself in his schoolwork and college preparations, trying to push down the growing anxiety that gnawed at him. But no matter how many hours he spent studying or how many college applications he completed, he couldn't escape the thoughts of Victoria, of the life they had secretly built together, a life that could never be known to anyone else. Their relationship, once a source of comfort, had become a burden too heavy to bear. They knew they were spiraling out of control, but the fear of losing each other kept them trapped in their destructive cycle. And as much as they tried to ignore it, the truth was inevitable. Something had to give, and when it did, it would shatter everything. As the months passed, the weight of Victoria and Tyler's secret relationship began to take a heavier toll on both of them. What had once been a forbidden thrill had now morphed into a haunting obsession, an addiction neither could escape. The clandestine meetings, stolen kisses, and whispered confessions that once brought them joy were now tainted by a growing sense of dread and paranoia. Victoria, once the nurturing and composed stepmother, had become a shadow of her former self. The stress of maintaining the facade of a normal family life was wearing her down. She would finish her yoga classes and come home to pour herself a glass of wine, sometimes 2 or 3, just to take the edge off. The alcohol dulled the guilt temporarily, but it couldn't erase the shame that gnawed at her. She knew that what she and Dylan were doing was wrong, and the constant fear of being discovered was pushing her to the brink. Her moods became unpredictable. At the yoga studio, she would alternate between moments of intense focus during classes and episodes of distracted daydreaming, all too often replaying her encounters with Dylan in her mind. Her photographers and agents noticed the change, commenting that their usually radiant models seemed distracted and had lost some of her natural spark during shoots. They didn't know about the sleepless nights, the internal battles, or the way her heart raced every time Robert mentioned Tyler's name in conversation. At home, Victoria was more isolated than ever. She withdrew from the neighborhood book club, avoided the other wives at community gatherings, and made excuses to skip family events. The lies piled up. She was tired, she had to work, she wasn't feeling well. But the truth was that she couldn't face the world, couldn't risk anyone seeing through the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. The only person she allowed into her life was Tyler, and even their relationship was becoming strained under the weight of their secret. Tyler, too, was struggling under the burden of their forbidden affair. The once easygoing honor student had become tense, irritable, and prone to outbursts of frustration. His grades began to slip for the first time in his academic career, and his teachers noticed that the model student who once participated eagerly in class discussions had become withdrawn and distracted. He threw himself into college preparation, spending hours on applications and scholarship essays. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape the thoughts of Victoria. The love he felt for her was consuming him, twisting his perception of reality. He told himself that they were different, that their connection was special and pure, but deep down he knew they were living a lie. The guilt was eating him alive, especially when Robert would call during his business trips, asking Tyler to take care of Victoria while he was away. The irony was not lost on Tyler, and it made him sick to his stomach. The breaking point came one evening in late February when Victoria showed up at Tyler's part-time job at the local bookstore. She was visibly shaken, her eyes red from crying, her hands trembling as she approached the counter where Tyler was working the evening shift. Tyler, who had been helping a customer, was surprised to see her there. She rarely visited him at work, preferring to maintain their boundaries in public spaces. "I need to talk to you," she whispered urgently when the customer had left. "It's important." Tyler glanced around the nearly empty store, then told his coworker he was taking a break. He led Victoria to the back office, his heart pounding with a mixture of concern and dread. "What's going on?" Tyler asked, closing the door behind them. Victoria didn't answer immediately. She paced the small office, her mind racing as she tried to find the words to express the turmoil inside her. Finally, she stopped and turned to face Tyler, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and desperation. "I think I might be pregnant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, Tyler was silent, trying to process what she had just said. When the reality of the situation hit him, he felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under him. "Are you sure?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from the look in her eyes. Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm late, and I've been feeling sick in the mornings. I bought a test, but I'm too scared to take it. Tyler, if I'm pregnant." Her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Tyler's mind raced, a million thoughts crashing into each other. How could this have happened? How could they have been so careless? But more importantly, what were they going to do now? A pregnancy was something they couldn't hide, a ticking time bomb that threatened to expose their dark secret to the world. "We have to do something," Victoria continued, her voice trembling with panic. "We can't let anyone find out. It would destroy us. It would destroy your father." Tyler could see the fear in her eyes, and he felt it too. But beneath the fear was something darker, a sense of doom that he couldn't shake. For months, they had been playing with fire, and now it had finally caught up to them. There was no easy way out, no way to undo what had been done. "We need to think this through," Tyler said, trying to calm her down, though his own heart was pounding in his chest. "There has to be a way to fix this." But Victoria was beyond reason. She had spent the entire day in a state of panic, imagining all the ways their lives could unravel if the truth came out. Her mind kept returning to one thought: They were trapped, and there was no escape. As the days passed, the tension between them grew. Victoria became increasingly erratic, her emotions swinging wildly from one extreme to the other. She would call Tyler at school, sobbing, begging him to help her figure out a way to deal with the situation. But no matter what solutions they discussed, none of them seemed plausible. They were stuck, and the walls were closing in. Victoria's mental state began to deteriorate rapidly. She started canceling modeling shoots, too afraid to face the cameras, terrified that someone would notice the change in her appearance or demeanor. She isolated herself in the house, avoiding all contact with the outside world. The guilt and fear had consumed her completely, and she was spiraling out of control. Tyler tried to be there for her, but he was struggling too. The pressure was unbearable, and he found himself lashing out in frustration. He blamed Victoria for the situation they were in, even though he knew deep down that it was just as much his fault. Their once strong bond was now fraying at the edges, and the love they had shared was being replaced by resentment and fear. The situation reached a boiling point one evening when Victoria confronted Tyler with an ultimatum. Robert was away on another business trip, and they were sitting in the dimly lit living room of their home, the atmosphere thick with tension. Victoria had been drinking again, and her eyes were wild with desperation. "We have to do something," she insisted, her voice slurred and frantic. "We can't keep living like this. It's going to destroy us." Tyler stared at her, his jaw clenched in frustration. "And what do you suggest we do, Victoria? We're in this mess because of our own choices. There's no easy way out." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but they quickly turned to anger. "You don't get it, do you? We're running out of time. If we don't do something now, we're going to lose everything." Tyler stood up, his patience finally snapping. "And what exactly do you want me to do? Magic it all away? We're stuck, Victoria. There's no fixing this." Victoria slammed her wine glass down on the coffee table, the liquid splashing over the edge. "You don't care. You're just going to let this happen, aren't you? You're going to let everything fall apart." "Of course I care," Tyler shouted back, his voice echoing through the empty house. "But I'm not a miracle worker. We've dug ourselves into a hole, and there's no way out." Victoria's face contorted in rage, and she lunged at Tyler, pounding her fists against his chest. "You promised you'd always be there for me. You promised we'd figure this out together." Tyler grabbed her wrists, stopping her from hitting him again. "I'm trying, Victoria, but this is too much. We've gone too far." For a moment, they just stood there, breathing heavily, the weight of their situation pressing down on them both. Finally, Victoria pulled away, her anger dissipating into a hollow despair. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her voice broken. "I can't live like this. It's tearing me apart." Tyler watched her, his heart breaking as he saw the pain in her eyes. He wanted to help her, to make everything better, but he didn't know how. He was just as lost as she was, and the realization that there was no way out left him feeling helpless and defeated. Victoria sank into the couch, her head in her hands. "I don't know what to do," she murmured, more to herself than to Tyler. "I don't know how to fix this." Tyler didn't have an answer. The love that had once brought them so much joy had turned into a curse, and there was no escaping it. They were trapped in a nightmare of their own making, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't wake up. As the night wore on, Victoria and Tyler sat in silence, the weight of their predicament hanging heavy in the air. The bond that had once been their salvation was now their undoing, and they both knew it. But neither was willing to let go, even as the darkness closed in around them. Their love, once a secret that they had cherished, had become a burden too heavy to bear. And as the days passed, it became clear that something would have to give. They were on a collision course with disaster, and when it finally hit, it would destroy them both. The night that sealed Victoria and Tyler's fate was bitterly cold. The kind of February night where the wind cuts through even the thickest coat and settles deep in your bones. The bare branches of the oak trees in their front yard scratched against the windows like skeletal fingers, a sound that mirrored the turmoil inside the Hayes home. Victoria had been drinking again, trying to numb the overwhelming despair that had consumed her. The pregnancy test she had finally taken that morning sat hidden in her dresser drawer. Positive, confirming her worst fears. Her mind was a chaotic swirl of terror, guilt, and the growing certainty that there was no way out of the situation they had created. Tyler arrived home late that evening after staying after school for a college counseling session. He had spent hours trying to focus on his future, on scholarships and applications. Anything to escape the relentless voices in his head telling him that they were doomed. But no amount of planning for college could drown out the reality of their situation. He knew he shouldn't go to Victoria that night. His emotions were too raw, his nerves too frayed. But he couldn't stay away. He had to see her, had to find some way to fix the unfixable. When Tyler walked through the front door, the house was eerily silent save for the creaking of the floorboards under his feet. The memories of happier times played in his mind like a broken record. Family dinners, homework sessions at the kitchen table, movie nights when Robert was home. Times that now felt like they belonged to another life. The weight of the past pressed down on him as he made his way to the living room, where he found Victoria sitting on the couch. A half-empty bottle of wine in front of her. That had once been their salvation was now their undoing, and they both knew it. But neither was willing to let go, even as the darkness closed in around them. Their love, once a secret that they had cherished, had become a burden too heavy to bear. And as the days passed, it became clear that something would have to give. They were on a collision course with disaster, and when it finally hit, it would destroy them both. The night that sealed Victoria and Dylan's fate was bitterly cold. The kind of February night where the wind cuts through even the thickest coat and settles deep in your bones. The bare branches of the oak trees in their front yard scratched against the windows like skeletal fingers, a sound that mirrored the turmoil inside the Morrison home. Victoria had been drinking again, trying to numb the overwhelming despair that had consumed her. The pregnancy test she had finally taken that morning sat hidden in her dresser drawer. Positive, confirming her worst fears. Her mind was a chaotic swirl of terror, guilt, and the growing certainty that there was no way out of the situation they had created. She looked up when he entered, her eyes bloodshot and hollow. "You're late," she said, her voice slurred but laced with accusation. "I had to meet with my college counselor," Tyler replied, though he knew it was a futile effort to maintain normalcy. Victoria scoffed, taking another swig directly from the bottle. "College? What's the point? We're trapped, Tyler. There's no getting out of this." Tyler didn't respond. He walked over to the couch and sat down across from her, the air between them thick with tension. He wanted to reach out to her, to comfort her, but he felt a chasm had opened between them, one that even their bond couldn't bridge. "We need to talk about what we're going to do," Tyler said after a long silence, his voice barely above a whisper. Victoria looked at him, her expression a mix of desperation and defeat. "Do what? What can we do? I'm pregnant, Tyler. There's no hiding that. People are going to find out. And when they do..." Her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Tyler swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation crashing down on him. "Maybe we should tell him," he suggested, though even as he said it, he knew it was impossible. "Maybe if we explain." Victoria shook her head violently, her eyes filling with tears. "Tell your father that his wife has been sleeping with his son? Tell him that I'm carrying his stepson's baby? Are you insane? It would destroy him. It would destroy all of us." The despair in her voice cut through Tyler like a knife. He had always been the one with solutions, the one who could think his way out of problems. But now he felt powerless, unable to protect Victoria from the dark reality they had created. "We could leave," Tyler began, but he didn't know how to finish the sentence. The truth was, he didn't have any answers. They had crossed a line long ago, and now there was no turning back. Victoria's tears began to fall freely, and she buried her face in her hands. "I can't do this anymore, Tyler. I can't keep pretending that everything is going to be okay. It's not. We're trapped, and it's only a matter of time before everything falls apart." Tyler felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He reached out to take Victoria's hand, but she pulled away, her body trembling with sobs. The sight of her, so broken, so defeated, was more than he could bear. The woman he had loved, protected, and shared his darkest secrets with was slipping away from him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "I'm sorry," Tyler whispered, though he wasn't sure what he was apologizing for. For getting them into this mess, for not being able to find a way out, for failing her when she needed him most. All he knew was that he was losing her, and the pain of that realization was unbearable. Victoria looked up at him, her tear-streaked face filled with a sorrow that seemed to reach into her soul. "Maybe it would be better if we just ended it," she said, her voice barely audible. Tyler felt a cold chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" Victoria didn't answer immediately. She stared at the wine bottle in front of her, her hands trembling as she reached for it. "Maybe it's better if we just end it all," she said finally, her voice filled with a resigned despair. "Together. No more hiding, no more guilt, no more fear." Tyler's heart raced as he realized what she was suggesting. "Victoria, no. We can't. We can't do that." "Why not?" she shot back, her voice rising in intensity. "What do we have left, Tyler? What kind of life are we going to have if we keep going like this? We're living in a nightmare, and it's never going to end. I'm tired, Tyler. I'm so tired." The desperation in her voice was palpable, and it terrified Tyler. He had always been able to pull her back from the brink, to reassure her when things got too dark. But now he could see that she had crossed a line, one from which there was no return. "I can't lose you," Tyler said, his voice breaking. "Please, Victoria, don't do this." But Victoria was beyond reason. She stood up abruptly, swaying slightly from the alcohol. "We're already lost, Tyler. Don't you see that? There's no coming back from this." In a sudden, impulsive move, Victoria stumbled toward the kitchen. Tyler heard her rummaging through drawers, and panic shot through him. He rushed after her and found her standing at the counter, holding a large kitchen knife. The glint of the blade in the dim light sent a jolt of fear through Tyler, and he quickly moved toward her. "Victoria, put it down," he pleaded, his voice shaking. "Please, just put it down. We can figure this out." But Victoria's eyes were wild, her mind a storm of emotions that had been building for months. "There's nothing to figure out," she screamed, her voice raw with anguish. "It's over, Tyler. We've lost everything." In that moment, something inside Tyler snapped. The fear, the guilt, the hopelessness. They all converged into a single, blinding rage. He lunged at Victoria, his only thought to stop her from doing something irreversible. But in the chaos, Victoria swung the knife wildly, and the blade caught Tyler's forearm, slicing through his flesh. The pain jolted Tyler back to reality, and for a split second, he saw the horror in Victoria's eyes as she realized what she had done. But the rage had taken over, and before he could think, before he could stop himself, Tyler grabbed the knife from her hand. In a blind fury, fueled by months of suppressed emotions and desperate fear, he stabbed her. The world seemed to slow down as the knife plunged into Victoria's body. The look of shock and betrayal on her face froze in Tyler's mind. He pulled the knife out and stabbed her again and again, the sound of the blade hitting flesh echoing in the silent house. When it was over, Tyler stood over Victoria's lifeless body, the knife slipping from his blooded hand and clattering to the kitchen floor. The rage that had consumed him evaporated, leaving only a crushing, suffocating grief in its wake. He collapsed to his knees beside her, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch her face, now pale and lifeless. "I'm sorry," he whispered through his tears, his voice choked with sobs. "I'm so sorry." For hours, Tyler sat there, cradling Victoria's body, his mind shattered by the reality of what he had done. The love that had once brought them so much happiness had ultimately destroyed them both. The house, once filled with the warmth of family memories, was now a tomb, the air thick with the scent of blood and death. When the first light of dawn crept through the kitchen windows, Tyler finally called the police himself. He couldn't live with what he had done, couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. When the officers arrived, they found him sitting in a pool of Victoria's blood, his clothes soaked through, his eyes vacant and hollow. He offered no resistance as they arrested him, barely registering the words the officers spoke as they read him his rights. The world had faded into a distant, muted haze, and all that remained was the overwhelming grief and the cold, hard truth of what he had done. The trial that followed was a media sensation. The revelation of the illicit affair between Victoria and Tyler Hayes shocked the community of Cedar Falls, and the gruesome details of Victoria's murder sent shivers through those who heard it. Tyler, barely coherent during the proceedings, offered no defense. He was a young man broken beyond repair, his soul crushed under the weight of his actions. The prosecution painted a picture of a disturbed teenager who had become obsessed with his stepmother, a young man who had manipulated a vulnerable woman and then killed her when she threatened to expose their relationship. The defense, knowing that there was little they could do to save Tyler, tried to argue for his mental instability and the extraordinary circumstances that had led to the tragedy. Robert Hayes, devastated by the loss of his wife and the betrayal of his son, testified with tears streaming down his face. He spoke of the Victoria he had known, the loving, caring woman who had brought light back into his life after his first wife's death. He couldn't reconcile that image with the woman who had been having an affair with his teenage son. In the end, the verdict was inevitable. Tyler was found guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge, in a solemn and somber tone, sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the gavel fell, Tyler showed no emotion, his spirit already broken beyond repair. The Hayes family home was sold within months, the memories too painful for Robert to bear. He moved across the country, trying to rebuild his life while carrying the weight of a tragedy that had destroyed everything he held dear. The neighborhood of Cedar Falls slowly returned to normal, but the shadow of what had happened in that colonial house with the red brick facade would linger forever. A reminder that even in the most picture-perfect communities, darkness can take root and flourish, destroying lives in its wake.